everyone. I'm glad that we have a quorum today. Thank you all for making an effort to get down here. Appreciate it immensely. I did want to say that one of our constant members here today is unable to be here, Joel Jackson. He said he was coming. He has had 14 stitches put in his face, and that's all I know. Those are all the details I have. But Joel was just given the Pasco County WaterWise Award by the Tampa Bay Community WaterWise Award Organization for how well he maintains his yard and up in Pasco County. And, you know, he's been such a great steward of the environment for many, many years, from the days he worked at the city until now was working for Hillsborough County and is now retired. But our congratulations to Joel for receiving
he's in
this
meeting,
award.
it looks like. We just don't see him.
What?
It looks like he's in
Yes, yes. As you all know, we have to have a certain quorum to meet in person. And so we have met that requirement. There's the first issue is to just say we're glad you're here, but we have a new member back here on Ingrid Van Theden. She has met the requirements all on Zoom meetings, including the last one that went to nearly 7 o'clock or after. Ingrid lives out near Lake Dan Preserve, and she rides horses at Quantum Leap Farms, which use some of the ELAPP property for their trails for riding people. So Ingrid, thank you so much for being here today. We have minutes from 2 meetings, and we couldn't get them approved last time or commented on. So first I'd like to do the minutes from October 5th meeting. If you had time to read them, would somebody make a motion?
I'll motion to approve.
Who was that?
Curtis.
Curtis?
I second. Michael Newitt.
Okay. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Anyone
Aye.
opposed, same sign. Now we'll do our recent minutes, and congratulations to Keisha, who manages to get those meetings done for us, and so well done. You can see what we couldn't do last time. So thank you, Keisha. If you've read them, is there a motion to approve the minutes from the March 29th meeting?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. The next on the agenda is the site nominations and boundaries, but I don't want to do that with USF being last. I would like that USF preserve discussion to come first. On about 3 o'clock today, I received a letter from the chair of the county commission regarding this, and I don't know whether you all have seen copies of the letter. But the BOCC voted 7-0 on April 21st to direct staff to investigate acquiring 769 acres of the northern property as described in the USF RFI. Have you all seen the RFI or any part of it? I drove by it on Sunday and had forgotten what a long distance it was really from the Hillsborough River over to the golf course. And it is, even the part along the roadway is very heavily treed, and you don't see just upland spaces, open like prairie or whatever. It's just all green space. The county commission would like the ELAPP General Committee to form. The board has formally nominated the site. They would like ELAPP to look at it and to go through our usual process that brings us to ranking of the site. So first, I'd like to ask if there's anyone from staff. Kurt, are you doing it, or Forrest or Ross, who is going to present this?
I thought I wasn't anticipating presenting anything regarding the USF Preserve. I am aware that the RFI was just, we don't know exactly what the intent from USF was. They were trying to maybe just test the waters to see what interest there might be in it. So it'll be interesting to see the nature of the responses that they get for this RFI. One of the things that they're looking at is to actually lease the property, which would be somewhat problematic under the ELAPP program because we really can't lease land from another entity. It also may bring attention to USF's effort to get additional funding, which is their primary objective, to try and fund additional educational opportunities. I know that there were a lot of students who were very concerned about conversion of the preserve area. We don't know if they may just do the golf course or if they're looking at both or whatever. The land use would have to be changed because right now it's institutional. That may have that's another process that they would have to go through. So this is the very early on in any action that would happen with that property. And depending upon how the board, I believe it's the Board of Trustees for the college, react, because most of the articles were not very favorable from what I saw. Would you concur with that? Okay.
It's 769 acres, and a huge portion of it is protected by the federal wetlands rules.
Correct.
So it can't all be developed any way you look at it. The property, as I understand it, is owned by the state of Florida. USF has had access to it all these years, and they have the golf course on the western end. The property goes all the way to the Hillsborough River on the eastern edge along Fletcher Avenue. The property from Tampa Palms, New Tampa development, comes in, and it's a huge wetland area that borders this property on the north side. So the issue is the university has used it as a preserve, as a teaching place for people in environmental sciences, I would assume in biology, studying animals, whatever. They say there is at least 400 varieties or species of plants and animals that need to be protected. Having gone to school at USF many years ago, I know that property has always just been there. Nothing has happened to it except for those uses. In Chairman Kemp's letter, she says, the board's first choice would be that the land continue to be protected by the state of Florida. It is important to note that the board is seeking broad information about different possibilities for protecting the land, even looking into the state and federal agencies. I don't know if any of you saw the board meeting about this site the other day, but it was a lengthy discussion. It is important to note the board is seeking broad information about different possibilities for protecting the land, including, but not limited to, ELAPP. So the board intends for this property to go through the ELAPP ranking process. And I think that's most appropriate for us to do. That way, it will be nominated to the program. It will be in this current year's annual report, and it will show up as an environmental preserve that certainly earns and deserves protection. Whether it is going to be for ELAPP to spend our precious dollars, or whether the state and other agencies will continue to protect it for further uses out there at the university. The golf course, which is included in this parcel, I'm surprised. They do have a golf team at USF. I was hoping that they'd be pretty good, but I don't know. The golf course could be considered if we were to end up purchasing it as an ease of acquisition, a piece that you would get, but you would only get it because it was the only way to get
Acquisition
the
of
rest of the
convenience.
property.
Acquisition of convenience.
Acquisition of convenience, thank you. So what I would like you all to discuss and have your say on is how you, if you are in agreement with having ELAPP take this parcel of land through our different committees, we have to get something back to the board by the 24th of May. So it would be nice if we had an action today that said we were going to take this forward through an ELAPP nominating, ranking, site selection, site inspection, all those teams. And USF doesn't know what they're going to do with this. I don't understand really how they end up with the money if in fact they should sell it to development. It may not go to development. So I think our best move forward is to just comply with the Board of County Commissioners' request that we take it through a ranking. And then Joe, and then Sally and Joe.
Thanks, Jan. I think you summed it up very well, and certainly we should go ahead and rank this property. If they've submitted it, we should rank it. We should certainly bow to their wishes to do what we need to do with this property. That doesn't mean we're endorsing buying it or not endorsing buying it. My concern, from the first time Forrest mentioned this at the Parks Board meeting, was the state of Florida should not be selling land. This land should be protected. It isn't protected, as I understand it. It can be developed except for the wetlands. So I think our concern should be rightfully trying to figure out a way to protect what we can protect out there, not allow it to go to development and be a subdivision. But I don't like the notion of the state of Florida looking at ELAPP as a bank account. They should be using Florida Forever funds if they want to, and they should allow us to put a conservation easement on it and not be taking our funds to quote unquote fund USF. So, which doesn't make any sense. If the state of Florida got this money, they're not going to naturally give it to USF anyway. So long story short, yes, we should rank the property. We should get it on our list, but I'm very concerned about us, quote unquote, giving top dollar to the state of Florida.
Well, and that's why I said we shouldn't be looking at our precious dollars being spent purchases. Yes, we need to look at all the other options that are out there for purchasing it. So,
Yeah, well, I agree with Jack, but I do think it's critical that we protect this is what our USF, I'm really appalled that we consider to jeopardize this property. I don't think they really realize it. But I think what the board is asking us to do is to buy with the our money, and they come to that, I think. That makes sense. That's really, I'm very familiar with this. Years ago, I used to hide that. It doesn't sound like much of it, to be honest. It's a lot of what you don't see. So, I think the commission has a lot of
went through motion, and we'll have a second, and then we'll continue the discussion.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, a motion has been made to follow the board's request that we put this property in our program to make sure first that it meets our minimum criteria, then carry it forward to the ranking, and then there will be the board and the state of Florida and USF and the federal government and everybody else's decision. But we will at least play our very important goal. Curtis, and then Kurt.
Don't we, I just had a question. I thought Don't we have a proper ELAP plan? I think it's called Eco Palms that's in this area.
To the north of this is a site that was nominated many years ago, Eco Palms. And what that was when Ken Good was developing the property, he got development pods of the uplands release without the adjoining wetlands released. A bank eventually foreclosed on those and another party bought them. The vast majority of that property has been preserved, some of it's been transferred to the city of Tampa, some of it has a subsequent conservation easement put on it, and under the PD, those properties are pretty much preserved through the planned development. So that's one reason why we didn't pursue acquisition
Hey,
of the
Jan,
Eco Palms
I saw a
property.
map.
Yeah.
There's an interesting it almost creates a total loop of environmentally sensitive land preserve. This parcel being the southern boundary were to be approved for preservation and the various other agencies in the consideration. If not, we have to but the only place where it's opted, and it almost makes a connection with the new boundary modification on the Violet Curry parcel. So it creates this whole big horseshoe loop all the way over to the Violet Curry Preserve. So it really is, it's a marvelous link is what we end up with. It's a good link. Sally, then Kurt, and then Mike. Did you get your question answered, Curtis?
I think so.
Okay.
I have to go back. I remember a property was
Sally?
And this is.
No, it did not include anything associated with the USF property. It only included portions of that were under the Tampa Palms development.
Can I speak now? Should I speak now?
Yes, you're right.
Okay, and this is sort of directed at Kurt and directed. If we look at it and we determine that it should, it meets the criteria, we've gotten land, I believe, that the county owned and transferred it over to ELAPP. We've partnered, whether it was with Florida Communities Trust or whatever. I think we need to look at all of the options. I'm not saying that any of them, I agree with Jack. I don't like the idea of giving the state of Florida a free ride, but it may be something, depending on the price and whatever, that we may need to partner with one of the other programs. You've been really good at doing stuff like that. So I'm just looking at the different kinds of options, because like the Alafai River State Park, that was phosphate lands that was owned by the state, and they couldn't do certain things until we partnered with the Water Management District to buy some of the land. So there are a lot of creative ways of looking at things. So I would hope that when they do the
And
evaluation.
Sally, that whole debate was held in front of the board, Mary Ellis Smith and Pat Kemp. I have the
It's right there.
verbatim here, but the board is not taking any action. They just want us to evaluate it so they can have a basis in their RFI to argue that it needs to be preserved land, whether it's preserved by the state, the feds, all of these partners, is a debate that the Board of County Commissioners has to have. Because as you know, we never vote to fund anything. We make our recommendations and rankings and the board goes from there. Kurt and Mike, and then Ann.
Sally, in response to your question about partners, right now, Florida Forever has very limited funding. Most of it's being directed towards the Everglades. This past nomination cycle, Florida Communities Trust had $10 million, and that was it. I'm sorry?
There's $100 million being proposed in this year's budget for Florida Forever. So
I understand, but we don't know how they're going to be allocating it, and again, it could be allocated to all sorts of different areas. And the legislature's not done yet.
I know.
So we're not sure what's going to happen with the budget, which is usually one of the last things that gets approved. The challenge with this particular piece of property and valuation is that we don't know how much of the uplands would actually be developable. These are located within the jurisdiction of the city of Tampa. So it would have to go through the city process, but again, it still has to use the land use change. A cost estimate as part of a road project by the golf course valued property of the golf course property at $5 to $6 per square foot. That equates to $250,000 per acre. And there are sales of nearby properties that are being set, for apartments and such that are running around well in excess of $100,000 an acre. So if you start doing the math on the 100 plus acres of uplands, you can imagine what kind of number we could be looking at for pursuing this. And again, I'm just cautioning you, is like, we spent a great deal of money on the Acknard transaction. That was probably the largest dollar acquisition that we did. And that was running around, I think, around $40,000 an acre. Again, and it goes back to what is the state going to require for this? Jan, I wasn't able to monitor the board meeting. Where did the May 24th date come from? Was that what the board wanted?
Yes.
Okay.
The RFI has to be submitted back to USF, I think, on the 24th.
I mean, it is something that would probably definitely qualify simply because it has natural habitat, listed species.
Yeah.
But just like we also had somebody nominate Egmont Key, one of the things we need to do is reach out to the owner to see if they're interested in selling. And that may be a challenge because getting a definitive answer from the university or the state may be difficult.
Mike?
Yes, thank you. Kurt, thank you. I was going to ask about the Florida Forever funds and any possibilities there. The other question I had is, does the eastern portion of this big property adjourn with Lettuce Lake?
The river's in between. Lettuce Lake is on the east side of the river. This parcel's on the west.
And so it would seem to me, because it's in the city of Tampa and it obviously adjourns Lettuce Lake Park, that maybe that could open up some funds. And it would sure seem like if we let the golf course go to the developers and we cut a deal on the rest, it would certainly make sense for us. I don't know how you guys would manage that, but it would seem like a logical proposal.
I don't think the
Again,
university
there are a lot
really.
of variables with a potential transaction on this property, and we really don't know where USF is going to head with this at this time.
But is USF even involved? I thought this was strictly the governor, his office, that authorized this and is going to be in charge of the sale, aren't they? That's what I was told by a realtor today.
Well, the RFI was being sent out by the University of South Florida. They're the ones who submitted the RFI.
But they don't own the property.
Well, what happens on these properties is that they're titled with the Board of Trustees of the Internal Improvement Trust Fund, which is the state, and then they are delegated towards the individual departments. Example, ELAPP lands are not titled with ELAPP. They are titled with Hillsborough County, a political subdivision, just like fire stations, just like the landfill, just like a lot of our stormwater ponds that we own in fee. But then they are basically designated to a particular department. So when we buy a library, that library property falls under library services. When we buy a park for ball fields, it goes under Parks and Recreation. So that's essentially what the state has. It's been designated to the university system. It would still have to go through the state process for transfer and comply with all of those policies, but it's under their control.
The property has been on the University of South Florida's master plan for a long, long time, and maybe forever, maybe from the time the university first acquired, the land from the donation many years back in the 50s. So if they do something with this land, it's going to affect their master plan, and they're going to have to bring that back for reconsideration too. Anne and then Megan.
So I have a question actually for Forrest. The commission has asked this to go through the regular assessment. The regular assessment. Can you do the regular assessment by May 24th and get a response? Can you do that?
So, Ann, I'm glad you asked that question. We don't have to have the ranking completed by May 24th. In fact, you could go out to your October meeting if you wanted to with that. Staff in the county are going to just respond generally to the RFI that's due on May 24th. It could be something as simple as expressing our interest in partnering with the state to potentially acquire the property. This particular site meets all the minimum requirements for the ELAPP program based upon the 8 ranking criteria that we currently have. So there's no question as to whether or not it will, be an approved ELAPP site. It will. The only question now is where will it rank? Will it be important, desirable, essential? And so that would be the question to be answered by the site assessment team, which can meet over the next month or so and take a look at the property. And as Kurt mentioned, we'll have to get permission to access the property as well. Hopefully we'll receive that. Hopefully USF will grant that request moving forward. But even if they don't, obviously we can still take a look at it from aerials. There's so many different reports out there that the university has worked on over the years that talk about the flora, the fauna, the ecological significance of the site, in particular the upland habitats. So I don't think there's going to be any shortage of data or information to work from here. But yeah, the site does not need to be formally ranked in terms of number criteria in order for us to submit an RFI.
So follow-up comment. Knowing how important uplands are for wildlife as well as the wetlands and so forth and the ecotones, I'm hoping that, in the best of all worlds, we get the whole thing and then restore the golf course. So I would just like to throw that out there. I think it's really important to think about restoring that acreage on the golf course too. So thank you.
Megan.
So listening to the board discussion, I'm wondering if it's appropriate, could we include under a separate header, not under the same site ranking header, but under a separate cover, a letter back to the commissioners saying, we agree with your assessment that this should be site ranked. We approve that, it's going forward. We also agree that it should not be, the first stop should not be to ELAPP for money on this property.
Russ.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Is the ELAPP program already doing the maintenance on this site? No. Who's doing the maintenance on the site currently?
I imagine USF for the sites that are accessible. I don't know that they haven't done any controlled burns or anything out there that I know of.
Well, I thought I read maybe I misunderstood it, but I thought I read in the dialogue that there in the BOCC dialogue that they had said they are already doing some burns. Let me look for that and I'll come back.
That would be the only maintenance, but it's not being handled by Hillsborough County, is to my knowledge. What do you have, Ross or Forrest?
It's been a few years. Have done a burnout in the past 5 years. Meaning
So you did do a burn out there?
We did not. USF did.
USF did, yeah. So it's not under ELAPP for maintenance.
Okay, thank you. I was just wondering because if we were already doing it, then we would already have some data on what the site looks like.
Yeah. So is there anyone, Fred, I see you on TV. Do you have any comment you would like to make?
That was going to be one of my questions. It's not only just the purchase price, but Forrest and Ross have to be concerned with the maintenance of the area. Are there any particular facilities? It's been a long time since I've been out there. Are there any particular facilities or anything like that out there? Or do you know?
They have recreation facilities on the waterfront. I don't know if that's included in this
That
proposal.
would be on the side of Lettuce
That's
Lake.
on, no, that's on
They
the,
encroach.
that's on the side where the uplands are.
On the
And they rent kayaks and canoes, and they have like a rope thing, and it's part of it is turfed and where you can have picnics and the students can use it.
So it's across, it's on.
It's
the
right directly
west side
across
of
from
the
Lettuce
river.
Lake.
Yeah. I think when I drove by, in fact, yesterday, there were a lot of people there on that side. But that would all still be under USF managing it, not us. So I think, Joe, your motion, do you remember it? Can you restate it?
My motion was to do what the board had requested us to do, to pursue, looking at, not to rank it or anything, but to go ahead and.
Yes.
So in response to Megan's question about what would we respond to the board, I don't think we get into the money discussion at all at this point. I think all we do at this point is say, are we going to proceed with the ranking? And yes, we're happy to proceed with the ranking. And then we'll worry about the money at some later time, and we've got a genius who can figure that out. So.
And that's part of the reason why USF is just requesting requests for information, because they don't know what to do with the property. So they just want some advice. And so we're going to just tell them how it turns on the ELAPP program. But we're not sending a recommendation to the board on anything. We're just saying we're going to put it through our process. That's what we're doing. Mike?
I was just wondering if it might be worthwhile. I've done some work with the Green Energy Project at USF, where every student pays $1 per credit hour into a fund, which is about $2 million a semester. And they've backed a lot of big projects in their area. And when it comes to the university there, they are the go-to people for environmental projects at USF. And I think they would have some political sway with people there at the university.
There seems to be an acknowledgement that at least the people I've spoken with, nobody really understands why this suddenly has come to the fore. So, but we're going to just move our process. So Joe has made his motion. I have 3 people who want to speak, so I can't, can you tell who has their hand up? Nancy, I don't see anybody with their mic. They're all muted.
Rocky Milborn has his hand up.
Okay, this is Rocky. The recreation area is not included as part of this partial. They're claiming tire boat launch, because I've done some work with Sierra Club, and that part of there, if you look at the map, they've excluded that partial there. So that's not included, the recreation area.
Because my understanding was the property was to go all the way to the river.
It does go over the river, but they got if you look at the map real close, they got that little bitty corner right next to Fletcher carved out there that's not part of it. But they still own that too, but they've got it carved out.
Who owns it?
USF still owns that car.
USF doesn't own it. The state owns the property.
Yeah, exactly. It's just the state owns it. USF has control over it, but that partial is not included in the RFI.
So USF has carved that piece out?
Yes.
Is that anyone else's understanding? Because there's also the piece that Tampa has north of it for mitigation. So, okay, Rocky, thank you for bringing that up. Who is Nancy Stevens? Brant? Ross, you're mic'd. You're muted.
Mary Keith has her hand up.
Mary Keith is here in the room. Mary, do you have your hand up?
No, this
Okay.
is Mary. This is Mary Keith, and I'm at home. I'm president of Tampa Audubon. I just wanted to add in. I was out there 2 weeks ago with the Native Plant Society on a trip, a walking trip. Somebody asked about facilities. There's no facilities in the uplands area other than several research installments here and there, but there were, I think, 4 grad students and a professor with us, and they were talking about all of the different classes and everything that that use the facility for classwork. I have the RFI up here, and there's nothing on the maps on it that show that they're carving out that recreational facility. But it also occurred to me, and I had put this in the chat a little bit ago, if it did become county property or under county purview, would there be any possibility of renting or leasing any of that back to the university for their classes and their research, and using those funds for ELAPP? Those were my comments. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Forrest and I discussed whether or not like if you got the golf course as an acquisition of convenience, and then you got the rest of the parcel, if in fact ELAPP had to purchase the property to protect it, there would be opportunities to work arrangements like we've done with other parcels. I think a high school out in eastern part of Hillsborough County. We've had a couple other sites where we have partnered with users, everything from a sod farm to riding horses, etc. So that would be a decision for the ELAPP General Committee to make in a future time if in fact ELAPP felt that we were forced into purchasing the property through the Board of County Commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Grant Henningsen has his hand up.
What did you say, Ross?
Grant Henningsen has his hand up.
Brent? I see him.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm just in favor of ELAPP doing whatever we can to help protect that parcel. I mean, we're looking at basically about 1.2 square miles of intact native habitat along that riverine corridor. And, that whole, we used to call that the eco area back when I was in grad school back in the 70s and early 80s. So it's a valuable piece. We certainly can't pay $100,000 an acre, but whatever we can do to help ensure that the right decision is made to protect it. I'd be curious to know why suddenly the university has gotten greedy for money and they want to sell off some of their environmental land, particularly right around the time of Earth Day. I find that very interesting, but I'll get off my soapbox. Just want to throw in my 2 cents though.
Thank you, Brent. We're glad you're with us today. So if there's no further debate.
Jan, you still got hands up.
Keep it short, please.
Yeah. I just wanted to express a concern about them cutting up the pieces, selling us what they can't develop anyway, and then using the highly profitable parts of land and keep those or develop those where we end up paying a premium for preservation, but they can't develop it anyway. So I would say what we should be looking at, it's the whole thing on a deal because it's already going to be conserved anyway, because otherwise it just doesn't make sense because the state of Florida is going to come in anyway.
Well, I think our staff, when they get out there to do the site assessment, will probably reference that piece, that small piece on the southeastern corner of the property. But we really need to. And, realistically, we're not making a decision to put this on any one of our priority lists, or we don't know how it's going to rank.
Right.
So we're just going to move forward according to Joe's motion, Sally's second. We're going to just take this action to move it forward and let the staff take over. The Board of County Commissioners will be notified of our action today. They will do their RFI, their proposal back to the university. We won't even finish getting to ranking until September or October. So it's not something that's going to happen immediately, but the Board of County Commissioners would like to move forward with this in trying to find ways to preserve and protect the property. And we're part of it. So on that.
Jan, you still have hands up.
I don't see which hands are up.
Nancy Stevens? Nancy Stevens?
Nancy?
Hi, Jen. I just have a quick, I just forwarded an email to Keisha that came from Stephen Hesterberg from USF that went through some of the values of the property, very well written, cited all of the sections in the master plan that talk about saving that land. So that would be a good reference for the staff and anyone who wanted to look at it. It had a lot of good information in it. So I forwarded that.
Perhaps you'll provide that to Forrest and Ross so they can have that for their information. Okay, who else has a hand up?
My boss, Forrest, has his hand up.
Forrest, do you want to talk to us?
Yes, I just wanted to provide you with one more nugget of information. So one of the questions that I had initially was, would the county need to submit some kind of a proposal for the entire parcel to include the golf course? Or if we were, say, just wanting to submit for the native uplands and the wetlands, which is basically the roughly 500 to 600 acres immediately to the east of the golf course, would that response to the RFI be considered complete? And the answer is yes. If you look on the bottom of page 6 of the RFI, I think it's the very last sentence. It states that your response can be for the entire parcel to include the golf course or some portion thereof. So I just want to make it clear that the county is not required to submit a proposal for the entire piece. Although there's some part of me that kind of agrees with Ann that it would be nice to restore that golf course. Although, from a value perspective, not sure that we could afford that. But I just wanted to point that out. So if we're just looking at the native uplands, which is about 118 acres, plus the roughly 500 acres or so of forested wetlands, that would be that would be considered a responsive RFI, even if we didn't include the golf course portion.
Jack.
Just real quick, Forrest, I don't think we should be repairing golf courses, but I do think as part of anything that we do should require a conservation easement so that golf course does not get converted to townhomes.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be ELAPP money again, but I think we move forward, we do what the county commission, Joe's motion, I agree with, and I think we should move forward and move on to other business.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We've had extensive debate on this. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Or raise your hand. Fred, is anyone opposed? It's a unanimous vote. We'll get the information back. Forrest, are you going to take the motion and the information to the board in a letter? Or are you going to chat with the chair? How are you going to proceed?
Yeah, I'll call Commissioner Kemp, let her know, and then if I need to provide any kind of written correspondence to the board, I'll do that. Or perhaps just write up something for your signature, Jan.
Yeah, I did talk to, have back and forth with Pat Kemp today, and I told her I would let her know this evening what action the ELAPP General Committee takes, so I will contact her. But if we need a formal letter to send to the Board of County Commissioners, that would be fine.
Okay, yeah, Jan, just let me know, however I can help.
I didn't hear what he said.
He said, just let you know.
Yes, 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 okay. Okay. Thank you, Forrest. Okay, well, so what we're going to do now is go back to the beginning of number 4 and move down the new site nominations, boundary modifications. And is Kurt doing that, or Ross or Forrest?
That would be me.
Good, welcome, Ross. You're
All
on.
right. I'm going to share my screen. Can everybody see this?
Yes.
Oh, and it went to the other screen, so now I got to bring it back to this screen. So the first one, everybody remembers the presentation that was given last meeting about the Cypress Creek Violet Cury nomination. So this map right here shows the site that was nominated and how it sort of links to the Cypress Creek Preserve and down to the Violet Cury Preserve. So when Forrest and I first looked at this, we weren't too keen on buying a wetland, which I'm going to bring up now. And of course, they're all going to go to the wrong screen. And you can look at the LiDAR view, and the majority of this site is a wetland. So it would most likely be protected, although crazy things have happened in our county. So we weren't too keen on that. But when you really started to look at the big picture and add some sites to the mix, you can create a very nice wildlife corridor from Violet Cury all the way up to Cypress Creek. All of these identified properties here are currently vacant. There's no houses on them. How we actually missed these when we were doing boundary modifications last year, I don't know. But you can see that you can add about 36 additional acres and have a really nice wildlife corridor through this area. Here is the big picture of the area. So one thing we would recommend is there was, and can you all see my pointer? There's a yellow square on the east side of the property. That piece kind of leads the road, doesn't provide any corridor. We would recommend moving that 3 and then remove and then include the nominations and all of the areas in fuchsia as a boundary modification to Cypress Creek. That's what we're asking for approval for.
Ross, you're breaking up badly.
I'm sorry, I don't know why. Can you hear me if I move closer?
We saw this one at our meeting in March. This is a repeat because we didn't have a quorum. Sally, are you making?
I'm moving approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Jacqueline is a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Same sign. Okay, that passes unanimously. Okay, on to Triple Creek, please.
Okay. Triple Creek is another boundary modification request. Another one of those sites that you don't, when you look at the county every day, you think you see everything, but we do end up missing things, believe it or not. So the area that's right in the center of the map that's highlighted in red and white dashed line is actually a cell phone tower. If you guys watch Fox 13 and when they do the Riverview camera, this is exactly where it is. It looks out over our Triple Creek Preserve. It looks out over Lake McGrady. So we wanted to add this as a boundary modification to connect Fishhawk to Triple Creek Preserve.
Do we have an agreement with the people over the cell tower?
We do not. We'd be looking at most likely a conservation easement because it's my understanding that it's the highest point in Hillsborough County. So they most likely would not want to sell because that's how they get, that's why they have their antennas and everything out there so they can put it out across all the homes. But we might be able to get a conservation easement on the property.
Okay. Christopher Gleason is in the lobby. I hope he'll come up. Ann made a motion to approve the Triple Creek boundary. Sally seconded the motion. Everyone in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you very much. Triple Creek is is a unanimous decision. Rocky-Brushy Creek designation change.
Okay, Rocky-Brushy Creek is an easy one. As you know, we keep Kurt super busy, and he's done a great job for us buying 3 more parcels along the Rocky-Brushy Creek Greenway. We're currently waiting to see if we're going to be funded through the Florida Communities Trust to get some money back. But we would like to change this designation from important, which it currently is, to substantially acquired.
Is there a, Russ?
Second.
Russ made the motion to approve this. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mike? Curtis? All in favor of the motion to approve the Rocky-Brushy Creek designation change, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? I can't see the people
They can't vote
on this that are Zooming the meeting. I assume Fred Webb is voting with us on this. Nancy Stevens, we're okay, I hope. At least the quorum has voted, so we've spoken. I think, I don't know. I think if they're not here, they don't have a vote. They're watching.
Actually, Janet, it's okay. This is Susan. It's okay for the voting members to go ahead and vote, even if they are virtual.
Okay, good.
They're part of the committee. You just had to have a quorum in person, but
Okay.
everyone is eligible to vote that is qualified to vote.
Okay, so right now on the screen, I don't see any of our members that are coming in virtually. So unless one of them casts a negative vote, we will assume they voted with us. So those of you who have spoken, Fred Webb, Nancy, Brent, are you still there?
Yes, I am, and so I'm voting yes.
Okay, you're voting yes. Fred, are you voting yes?
Yeah, voting for all the ones we've considered so far, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So when I call for the vote, I'm going to ask you all to vote first for the next 2, and then we'll see what the room has so we can see what's playing out here. The next one is Buckhorn Springs, designation change.
Okay, so on your screen now, you see Buckhorn Springs. This site is owned by Mosaic and has actually been on the provisional suspended list with ELAPP for a very long time. I'm pretty sure since before I got here 20 years ago. So Mosaic is actually interested in a possible conservation easement on the property. Since this site was provisionally suspended, it did not get ranked during last year's re-ranking of all the sites. So we have 2 options. The one that Forrest and I would like to recommend is, since the site was a Class B site prior to it being put on the suspended list, we would like the committee to consider the ranking that I have done on the site, which would be just like when we go to the site selection team. So I actually did the ranking for Buckhorn Springs, just going through the data that's available, and I can send this out, but it pretty much ends up being a total of 30. So not the highest of our sites, but the second tier, which is important. And it would allow us to start negotiations on this valuable site, which does include a spring that they currently use to provide Zephyr Hills water to people.
Before this was taken off the list, we did rank it at one point, didn't we?
Yes, it actually was ranked as a Class B site, so
Yeah,
it was
B,
ranked
so-
pretty high.
So are you changing it from a B?
Well, we don't have B anymore. So
We have all our new, yeah.
right. So this
You're putting it in which category?
important, and most of the sites that were in the Class B category did fall into important. They're not the most important pieces that we want. They're not essential, but they are important pieces to the program for some reason. This one being that it's almost all native. It has a working, flowing spring on the property, and it would be a nice addition along the Alafaya River.
Thank you. Okay,
Motion
so
for the
Fred
change.
and Brent, we don't have a motion. Well, we need a motion. So
I just made a motion.
we need a motion that states we're taking it from a B to an important site.
I'd like to make that motion, and just with the caveat that Lithia and Buckhorn were two of our very first nominations, going way back to like probably the second year.
Actually,
The first year.
Sally's made a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Who?
Joe.
Joe. Thank you, Joe.
And Jan, I stopped sharing my screen just in case you want to ask the virtual members to raise their hands.
Yeah. If Brent and Fred and Nancy, can you all just say yes, thumbs up, finger, whatever.
Yes.
Okay.
Brent
where's
Henningsen, Brent Henningsen, vote yes.
Okay.
Joel Jackson votes yes.
Red Web votes
Hey,
yes.
Joel, nice to have you with us.
I'm here.
All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that also.
I just wanted to mention real quick that when I was managing the bond program in 1977, about 1980, we tried to buy that parcel and were unable to under the bond program that I managed way back in, it would have been about 1980.
Wow.
Joel, the General Committee congratulates you on winning your Tampa Bay Waterwise Award.
Oh, I was here. I heard you. Thank you for.
Okay, thank you.
Is Christopher Gleason being admitted into the?
Who is Christopher Gleason? His name keeps showing up and he's downstairs. Is he part of this? Well, we're going to go on. So we did the USF Preserve. So now we're going.
Jan?
I think he's in the Zoom lobby.
No, people can't come up without escort right now.
Yes.
So somebody.
That's how we got
Sure.
here with an escort.
I'll go down and get it. If he's downstairs.
No, I think it has to be one of the sheriffs.
Oh. I was escorted by that person.
I wasn't even escorted. I just did.
Well, when Eileen and Ingrid and I got here, we had to stand downstairs and wait for a sheriff.
The sheriff is one sitting at the wall.
Yeah, so.
You want to see if I can get him?
Yeah, Kurt, why don't you see if you can locate this person and have him come up? Can you do that? Thank you.
This is the front door.
I think we did this at the last meeting and he was down in the lobby and he never made it up here, so. Okay, so who's gonna do the recommended changes to site ranking policy? Ross?
Would be me as well, although all of a sudden I'm having technical difficulties and it will not pull up my Word document anymore. It's only pulling up the properties of the document. But anyway, I can explain this one. And those on the site selection team will know what I'm talking about. At last year's site selection team meeting, we had a category called acquired, and it was very confusing. It was a good start to trying to rename some of our ranking criteria, but when you see acquired, everybody assumed that the entire site was acquired, even though it meant that a substantial amount of the site was acquired, not the entire thing, and that it should be our mission to acquire the rest of the site. So the site selection team asked me to bring this back to you all and change the category from acquired to substantially acquired to make it a little more clear. And I have the revised language. I had it all X'd out and everything, but it's really just there's one category that says acquired, and we're going to change it to a substantially acquired.
Move approval.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Who's the second?
Joe.
Joe, thank you, Joe. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Say
Aye.
Those of you on camera, Fred, Brant, Nancy, Joel.
I vote for approval.
Aye.
Okay, that's it.
Brent Henningsen approves, yes.
Joel Jackson approves yes.
Nancy?
She already said yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that one's a done deal. Got another one, Ross?
That was it.
That's it, huh? All right, there's an issue here for the trail naming in honor of Kent Bailey, and at the last meeting, we talked about connecting the eastern portion and the western portion as the Green Swamp Preserve. And that's what we selected. I have received a letter from the Sierra Club. And did you all get a copy of this letter from the Sierra Club? Did you say, okay. The letter is dated April 19th. I didn't get it until today. And the Sierra Club is arguing that Kent was so important and so involved in bringing this property, which was known as the Cone Ranch, to ELAPP, and getting the property. And if you could take it back a few years, it was owned by the county's utility department. We didn't end up paying for it. I think it was just retitled over as an ELAPP parcel because the county had already owned the property. So they also sent me a list of all of the newspaper articles. There must have been 20 of them in which Mr. Bailey must have made some comments and observations. But their story is how Cone Ranch became ELAPP property. Oh, where's my little thing here? Dates back several years, and it's the environmentalist activists who were led in that effort by Kent Bailey. And they go on to talk about how important he was to us getting this property into ELAPP, dealing with the county administrator, the Board of County Commissioners, etc. Said when Kent Bailey discovered this private hunting preserve plan, that was when a group of people wanted to sell off 2,000-acre parcels for individuals to have this property, to build a home, and to go hunting on their 2,000 acres. And how he was, as most of us were not particularly in favor of that. At any rate, the Sierra Club's request is now I don't know that they know that we selected to name the trail. So they are now requesting that the bridge that is right there near the end, right at the entrance into the huge thousands of acres of land, they would like to have the bridge named for Kent. And we've already taken an action and named a trail for him. Mike, do you know what the Sierra Club, did they vote on this?
No, we have not. And I've been in touch with Rocky Milburn, our chairman, at length even today, and I have not heard previous to this time that trail was, you had thought about naming the trail for Kent. Previously, we were under the assumption that he was going to get a plaque at the end of the trail, and so we didn't think, we had all kinds of people. We had quite a lot of people, both members, which we had 2,600 members here in Hillsborough, both members and ELAPP people, as well as board members at the Sierra Club, all hoping to get a little bigger tribute that maybe more people would be aware of for Kent. And so that was the force behind us asking maybe to get a plaque on the bridge there or something on the front of the trail, you know.
Well, I think at our last meeting, didn't we say that we would put a mark at I don't have that written in my personal notes from the last meeting. Forrest or Ross, do you remember, when you name a trail, you put a sign up and name the trail.
Jan, we can barely hear you. Rocky's turning on his microphone and it's just static and screeching.
Rocky, can you turn your mic off a minute? Thank you. We'll come back to you.
So yes, you're correct. We, at the ELAPP meeting, you all discussed the naming of a trail with a plaque. Immediately after that meeting, I started working out these details with Rocky, and we thought we had everything squared away until recently when the Sierra, they went out there and they didn't like the location of the trail and the fact that it gets a little wet during the rainy season. So this was a last minute change. We received the signed letter today. That's why you received the signed letter today.
So what does staff want to do with this? my personal opinion is that the bridge is the main entrance into the park, and it ought to remain as an ELAPP parcel with a title of what the preserve is. In effect, if you put it there at the bridge, I think you're naming the entire, how many thousands of acres in Kent's name, and is that what you think we should do? Rocky, wait just a minute for Ross's response.
Rocky, I'm going to mute you until it's your time to talk. I'm going to let the committee decide that. I do know that over the years, any structure down to a bench in one of our facilities, if it's going to be named for somebody, needs to go through the Parks Board. We only have one other trail and facility named after a person, and that's at Cockroach Bay from Gus. And Gus gave all the money to do the trail and the facility at Cockroach Bay. But I'm gonna rely on the committee for this one, and then we'll have to see if it has to also be approved by the Parks Board if the structure itself is going to be named. But yes, we were under the impression that a plaque would be installed at the trail that we mutually agreed upon way back when, and this is a last minute change.
Yes. I'm going to ask, we have 2 Parks Board members on the ELAPP General Committee, and perhaps they can give us a sense of what the Parks Board would hear on this. Jack and Joe.
Yeah, my feeling, in all deference to the Sierra Club, which I love, and Kent, that I love even more, I think that what we talked about was the appropriate honor for him here. I think that a plaque on the trail is a fitting, in my mind, it's a fitting tribute. And I certainly don't want to push our naming rules through the Parks Board, which is right now going through what we're going to charge people to name, baseball fields and things. It's just not a good time to be naming a bridge as opposed to putting a plaque on a trail.
And perhaps the plaque could be at each end of the trail in case you come in from the east or the west. So it would require 2 markers on the trail.
That's fine.
Is that so? Now, Ross, Joe, do you want to comment?
No, I would certainly like to see Kent honored, but the naming is that you get into some difficult area, and I'd like to see staff working out with the Sierra Club where everybody's happy about this.
Okay, thank you. Is Forrest, can you or Ross, can you unmute Rocky and let him speak? Rocky?
Yep, Rocky can unmute himself. He's ready to go.
Okay. Okay. We're not opposed to the trail. The problem was we were there in dry season, and it's way at the back end of the corner. Nobody will ever see it. We went one way, and the trail was completely underwater. It was a long way back there, and it was like it was a long way back. It doesn't have to be on a bridge. We just want people to be able to see it and recognize it. We don't care if it's on the bridge or on the side of a trail, but it's a long way back. In fact, we couldn't even get one way during the dry season. Part of the trail was underwater, and that was the problem. You could even see where the lawnmower had to turn around because it was too wet, and they couldn't even get down the trail. There's 2 ways to get to that trail, and that was our only objection. It was just so far back there, and most people didn't even won't go back that far. And that's the only objection. We don't have to be on the bridge. We just want it to people to see it, not stuck back in a corner somewhere.
On this particular property, do we have a brochure, Forrest or Ross, that lays out the area and the different trails? And
yes,
can
actually show
be put on that brochure where the trail is, and that way anybody picking up the brochure would be able to go to it and know that it was in Kent's honor?
Absolutely, Jan. If you look at the screen now, the trail that we were looking at is highlighted in green. and we can leave it that way. And we even have a little spot on the right-hand side in the legend that we can say, this is the Kent Bailey Trail or whatever we want to call it. It is pretty far back in there, but the reason that this area was selected is because it takes the old pine plantation that is being restored and connects it to the only native untouched piece of the property that remains at Cone Ranch. It's the only spot that's never, it's called section 26. It has the 7 and the 6 and the 5 on it, the white trail there.
Yeah.
So it connects you to nature. The only spot that has never been cleared for cattle, never been cleared for pine plantation. It's the only native spot on the site.
Suppose from where the green line is on the east side, you were to bring the green line down to where the white line touches the blue and the yellow, just expanding the Kent Bailey Trail. Could we do that?
Well, one thing we could also consider is, I mean, we could always put it, you all see the number 5?
No.
It's the white trail.
Okay.
And it kind of, there's that spur that goes down to the orange trail. We could always put it right there at that little black and white circle so that when you enter into this section of the property, that can be the trail.
Okay, I think that's a great solution to this, and it brings it closer to the main entrance and probably gets it away from that wet parcel. So we should have a motion to approve expanding the trail in Kent's. If you all think that that's an appropriate solution, would somebody please make a motion to that effect? Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that if it's proper, because we verbally agreed at the last meeting, however, we did not have quorum, so that motion was never fully, so we can't adjust a motion that we never actually passed.
Right.
So I just want to make sure, as long as that motion is in order, then yes, I will second it.
I'm pretty sure that's in order because it's a new motion.
It's a new,
and
okay.
It's an expansion of what we discussed. So that motion, in my opinion, is in order. Susan, are you there?
Yes, I think that would be appropriate. I mean, obviously you didn't have a quorum, so you couldn't take a formal vote, but you had a lengthy discussion and this is just expounding on that and then formally approving it.
Okay. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
And I need the votes
Henningsen says
from,
yes.
I'm sorry.
Brent Henningsen votes
Brant?
yes.
Brant?
Brent Henningsen votes yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Fred?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion has approved to expand the trail down to the number 5. And Paul?
Jan.
Oh,
Okay.
thank you very much for being here. I don't think we have any more votes to take. Please excuse Joe. He has a memorial to go to this afternoon. Many of you who knew James Urbanski with the Tribune has passed away and he's attending his service. So the trail naming issue has been resolved. I think I had the issue of a quorum has been a problem for us. And I didn't have a chance, as I'm looking at the numbers, at our last meeting, we had 22 members. We had 5 people that had they attended the last meeting would have met the requirements to be a member, which would have brought us to 27 members. I received a report from that Susan Miss Fernandez had gone over, and from Mary Helen Ferris. And she said the ELAPP committee, in her recommendation, is that we have 21 members and that it would mean our quorum was 9, I think she said. And I thought I brought the papers with me, and at the moment I can't spot them. But what I would like to do is have the Theodore Roosevelt subcommittee that needs to respond to some issues that we had at our last meeting and have them take up this issue along with the TR. That way, if the committee is already established, they can come together and address this issue of a quorum. What I will tell you is when I looked at Robert's Rules of Order, you can establish a quorum. So Susan, what I don't understand is this a government rule that the quorum has to be a majority plus one? Is that a state law, a county position? ELAPP doesn't function by bylaws. We function as we agreed to back in 2008 to function under Robert's rules. And under Robert's rules, you can establish a quorum in a lot of different ways. It can be a percentage of the people who are on the board. It can be the majority plus one. In some cases, in corporations, it can even be as few as just 2 people equal a quorum. So I think before the committee meets to debate this, we need to know if the way that Mary Helen has proposed the quorum be applied to ELAPP and the changes be made to our procedures is a rule of the state or the county, because it appears to me that that's the issue. Now, 9 is not a majority plus one if there are 21 members, and the only way we can get back to 21 members is if we go back and look at people and have a policy also that says if people who have been voting members miss so many meetings within a certain time frame, they are no longer voting members and have to come back and re-up their position by attending 3 meetings within the 6 meeting time frame. So
Do you allow excuses?
what I would
allow excuses if somebody excused absences if somebody's
yes,
out of town.
no, they can have an excused absence. It has to be excused by the chair. And she wrote here, the failure of a voting general committee member to maintain compliance with the attendance requirements shall result in the loss of voting privileges unless the absence is excused by the chair. So maybe you can tell me how the county and the state reach the rules for a government body or agency to establish a quorum.
So Jan, this is Susan, and what I'll probably need to do is circle back with Mary Helen on that. We were defaulting to Robert's rules, which, as you stated, allows you to establish a quorum in a number of ways. Obviously, 9 isn't half plus 1 of 21, but it could also be a percentage. It could also be a set number. And that was just a recommendation, as was the number 21 in terms of 21 voting members. That's not anything that you have to, rule on today. I think a subcommittee is a great idea, but it can be whatever number you all select. But you just did express an interest in capping the number of general committee voting members. Maybe that's not necessary if we just establish 9 as a quorum, or a percentage as a quorum, and we can discuss that. Maybe if we do that, there's no need to put a cap on the number of general committee members in total. These are just ideas that we kind of were kicking around and certainly merit further discussion.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that response. So if the subcommittee is willing to take this on, Jack Berlin?
Well, the only thing I want to speak to, the reason we have the rules that we have and the membership requirements that we have, same with Friends, is to make sure that a group of folks don't walk in and are able to vote on something by overwhelming the majority, right? So my suggestion is I think we should establish a low quorum number. 7 or 9 seems reasonable. 7 seems more reasonable than 9. I think we ought to make sure that people that are missing X number of meetings are no longer voting members, so that we can keep our roster down. So again, so we don't have a flooded group that comes in and overwhelms a vote for something. The only other thing I would suggest besides that is that you make sure that meetings do have to be duly called by a set of directors or officers, as opposed to allowing a quorum to be formed by a group of voting members. So, because then a group of 9 people under her rules could technically hold a meeting and vote on something. So I think that the rules were there to protect us in lots of ways, and we can do the same thing and still have a smaller quorum by making sure the way meetings are called, allow the membership to be as big as you want to, as long as they're active, but make sure meetings have to be called by our directors, our officers, and that, and I think we continue to allow people to establish a quorum in person, because that's state law, so it's 7. I'm going back to that number, lucky 7, because it was not pleasant to come down here, spend an hour and a half and drive back and then come back, right? It's not pleasant for anybody involved. So I think if the subcommittee will just think about what we're trying to do, what we're trying to protect, I think we can do this in a smarter way.
The issue becomes is the way we have always done it. We have gone from, you remember, Mike Kelly, and when we were lucky if we had 10 members in an ELAP meeting, and now we have a likelihood of 27. Can you imagine this room tonight if we had 50 people here? So I think there has to be a way of capping the maximum number of people who can serve. I had a very interesting discussion with Commissioner White about this. And he believes very strongly that there needs to be a maximum number selected. The way people leave the committee for whatever reason, for death, moving away, lack of interest, not meeting the attendance requirements, whatever, opens the door, and you can always have the list. Keisha's so good about keeping our list of people that have met the requirements, so that if somebody leaves, another person come in. But I think to debate all this today is futile. Let's send it back to the committee, because the T.R. Roosevelt Committee has a need to meet again over issues that came up. And so, but always, as is always, if a subcommittee meets, any member of this group may also attend the subcommittee meeting. Russ?
Yeah, I would like to attend that. That would be awesome. But I wanted to point out there's a lot of public boards that BOCC appoints specifically that have limited numbers. One of the beauties of ours is it's public and anybody can attend if they want to get involved. This is how you get recognition from BOCC to get appointed to one of their closed limited boards. So I think, in the spirit of, we want more people involved in ELAP, spreading the ELAP message. So to restrict that number, I would be hesitant. I think there's an alternative way to do that through the subcommittee, rewriting it to basically say, hey, if you haven't met your attendance requirement, you are suspended until your attendance reactivates you.
Yes.
So then if somebody shows up, they're counted for quorum, but if they don't show up, they don't count it against quorum more than once.
Yes.
And that
Okay.
might be the solution to handle that.
I need a motion to forward the issue of the quorum and membership to the subcommittee. Jack? Megan, second. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Fred, did you hear the discussion?
I did, aye.
Aye. Joel?
Aye.
Brant?
Aye.
Nancy? Aye. Who did I miss? Have I got everybody? Megan did. Okay, all in for the motion is unanimously approved. So, iWatch says it's 5:15. I don't know if that's probably it's probably never been set. So I don't think we have any other serious issues, but I want to open it to the board for anybody to raise any issues they'd like to talk about. Ann?
So I have a question for staff. Do we have any issues with trap, neuter, and release for cats on our preserves?
I'm sorry, Ann, I didn't understand the question. I couldn't hear it. We have trouble with what?
With feral cats and trap neuter release colonies on our preserves.
We do not have any problems with that happening on our preserves. We do have that issue with people that have the colonies adjacent to our preserves. So we do have people that take care of cats and allow them to be kept there. They feed them, but we're not having any cats actually released on our preserves. That's something that I worked with Animal Services on.
And I have one other thing that's more of an announcement. Can I do that, Jan? I have another thing that's more of an announcement.
I am not hearing you.
Okay, go ahead. So I just want to tell everybody that the Florida Birding and Nature Festival Board is going to have a Florida Bird and Nature Festival in October. 15th through 17th, and we really appreciate the help of the ELAPP staff and the CLEM with those field trips and all the help that they give us for that.
What is the date?
October 15th through 17th.
And is it going to be down in Ruskin again?
It's going to be mostly at the various field trip sites. People will drive directly to the field trip site and then go out and do the bird watching and other things. There will be Zoom presentations, and then the Nature Expo is going to be at the Manatee Viewing Center.
I sent the Teddy Roosevelt Award, which was given last week. There was a press release on the VOCC or on the county site, but there's no link or information on the ELAPP page. So I wanted to suggest, when I mentioned something to Keisha before the meeting, and I've emailed Ross and Forrest, that I think we need to address some issues on the ELAPP page that don't. A couple of things. First of all, there wasn't information about the Keep Tampa Bay Beautiful Award, which is using which is located on one of the ELAPP properties, the Dr. Reed site. And secondly, there's no information about past winners. So it would be nice to have that information. We have an issue every year with people nominating people and not getting nominations and whatever. And I think if we beefed it up a little on the ELAPP webpage, that we might get more response. So that's kind of an FYI of what I'm up to. And if anybody objects, don't tell me.
Or
I don't think anybody
do
will.
that.
We can add that to the ELAPP webpage that Kurt and I have been talking about updating for a year and a half now.
Okay, thank you very much. Ann and then Ingrid.
So I just was wondering, So I was just wondering if Kurt had anything he wanted to report on acquisitions.
This past week, the board approved a couple different contracts. Let me shrink this down a little bit so you can see it better. Approved the $1.2 million contract on the 20-acre Hagen property. This area is in that RP2 section. You can see this development here is in process, and this piece across the street just got approved as well. Last year we had the Jeffcoat property approved, so this kind of finishes off an area where we were having a lot of, potential for a lot of impact to the surrounding preserve. And it's getting a little harder to do transactions these days. So the special deal on this one is that the owner who's been living out there for more than 40 years gets, where we were trying to effect a life estate. She has a lease at a nominal rate, and she has the ability to stay there as long as she lives there. And it's a very detailed lease, so that if she should move out, go to a specialized living facility, or passes, the lease ends. The lease could go up for 20 years. We really don't think it'll last 20 years. We have the ability to manage everything else. It's just that we really don't have a lot of public access there, but we all have plenty of adjoining land. The board also approved the purchase of this 138 acres here in red. This is Alderman's Ford Preserve is over here, and this is the Alpine North Prong coming up here to State Road 60. And what's interesting about this is that the area outlined in the yellow is a mitigation area for mosaic as part of mining, so it has a very good connection to all these other preserve lands. And we acquired this at about 80% of appraised value. Part of the deal is that we will name a trail, the Gooch Family Trail, as part of this, but we did get a very good price on that. Now, I mentioned previously, this is the AgMart acquisition that was mentioned at the last, one of the earlier meetings, or meeting late last year. The board has approved it, and there's some interesting aspects of it. The Water Resource Department is fully funding this portion over here in the east. They're planning a major water complex there. And then here, this is almost all this is going to be ELAPP. However, there will be they're reserving strips along Balm Road and Balm Riverview Road for pipelines and potentially additional right-of-way if needed, because if we bought it, it would not be available. But a special little aspect with this transaction is that we also have water resource funding for some various locations where Tampa Bay Water can put in some wells and pipelines, because we've reached a tentative agreement with staff, and it's being reviewed by their board members, that Tampa Bay Water, in exchange for these easements, will release their water supply development rights in the property formerly known as Cone Ranch. We've been trying to get that out of there since the 2000. For those of you who haven't been around here for 32 years, the county bought the Cone Ranch, 13,000 acres in the northeast county part of the county, as in conjunction with the West Coast Regional Water Supply Authority for a well field. When Tampa Bay Water was established, they continued the right. So they had the right on what is now the Lower Green Swamp Preserve to put wells in, to put roads, wells, pipelines, wherever they want to on that 13,000 acres. Because of the distance away from the urban services area and the hydrological aspects out there, they can't get enough water to make it really worthwhile. Recognizing that they're not just going to give it up, the idea that was came up with, well, if we offer them to effectively relocate their well field to this property here and give up their well field there, then it's kind of something that is a little more generally accepted by the other members of the governing board. And from what the indication that I have so far from Tampa Bay Water staff is that it looks like that their board is going to approve that. So it only took me 20 years to get that to happen. Continuing on, this is the Holmberg property, and to the north here we have the Cheeto Branch Preserve, which is part of the reservoir. You see a little piece of the reservoir over here, and this area down here is the Bomboyette Preserve. This is another one with some very unique aspects to it, because Mr. Holmberg's got a landscape nursery business and wants to continue using it. So we have established agreement for a life estate on the area in green, so he can continue his landscape business. He'll have a short-term lease, a couple of years on the area in yellow, so that he can phase down his operations. And that one of the aspects of most life estates is that they're usually to a family member. So that if a parent wants their child to have a property, they convey it to them and the parent reserves a life estate. And the parent is going to take care of the place because they want the place to be in good condition when it gets to their child. We don't have that relationship with Mr. Holmberg, so as part of the transaction, we're going to have an agreement that makes sure that the property is not degraded and all sorts of other conditions that govern and potentially early release if he decides he doesn't want to run his business anymore. Not your typical agreement. This is still in process. I hopefully will have this transaction under contract in the next 2 to 3 months. There's a lot of details and a lot of moving parts. And one other one that is a little bit complicated is the Riverton property. This is Shell Point Road. This is the Bahia Beach, and this is the Little Manatee River. This area in red is known as the Riverton parcel. It basically completes the a landscape connection down to the river. Forest and our intergovernmental relations people were able to get a grant from the Deepwater Horizon funding through the Restore program. So we have about $5 million to acquire and restore this property. It was originally going to go for the Reeder Farms property down in the middle of the Water Management District rock ponds, except Mrs. Reeder did not want to sell and did not like, does not have a great respect for government either. So this was our second choice. This is challenging because there's a couple of aspects is that this is also in the South Bay CDD, and they also own property in that. So I've got 2 different owners with contracts that have to close simultaneously, meet the federal requirements, and also have the properties taken out of the CDD. We're working on those contracts right now. We hope to go to the board. Maybe it'll most likely be June. We're a little bit above appraised value, but almost all of the acquisition costs are being funded from the Restore Council, or Restore grant. And since I know you're going to ask, Jan, we are continuing discussions with the Greenpoint developer regarding Triple Creek. However, the aspect of actually acquiring that ownership is not going to be practical because of the profits that they can make under the current real estate market, and because the way they fund their improvements, it was a negotiating challenge. We're now trying to work with them to kind of reconfigure those development entitlements to maximize or minimize the impact to the overall property and work out a transaction for the balance. So they'll still have their little island of development, but hopefully, and I'm still working with them on this, so it's still a maybe, that we'll reach some type of agreement so the balance of the property would be transferred to the county and managed as natural open space.
They had a right to like 65 home sites. 65 home sites on?
They actually have, I think it was more than that. I think it was 65 home sites. But because they were going to put all their development costs into a CDD that's passed on to the other people, and trying to prove that up with the appraisals just became impossible. There was a proposal to, we couldn't get support for what we would have to pay for them, the difference between our appraised value and what they wanted. So this was the next best option. Okay.
That parcel is isolated between our 2 major preserves, that they would be very concerned about our maintenance and future burning on their parcel. Because it really does create, I think, like an island right there in between those 2 parcels. So I wish you well. I hope there's a way to get it. And realistically, they could be very generous and turn around and say, we're going to keep this parcel over here, we're going to develop it, and we're going to donate this to you and take a federal tax break.
We don't know if it'll be a donation. We're finding out what they want to do. They are strictly profit motivated. I've been working on this for well over a year with this current effort. Okay. All right.
Are you finished?
I'm done.
Thank you very much, and I'm sorry you weren't on our agenda. Next time, maybe
Well,
you are, I will ask.
Okay, well, I was a little surprised myself. Let's see, where do I go?
We always want to know what you're doing. Ingrid, you're next.
Great, thank you. Thank you. I wanted to just call attention to the group in reviewing the 2 packets of materials going back to the USF parcel. In addition to the environmentally sensitive flora and fauna on this parcel, there is multiple references to the archaeological artifacts and the burial mounds of indigenous people originally documented in the 1930s by the WPA project. This is one of 11 sites in the state of Florida where this has been researched and documented. I'm concerned that attention is being paid to this.
One of the issues in our ranking procedures.
Very good. Thank you.
Oh, I was just going to say earlier, to help him negotiate for that last site that we were talking about, let's plan some prescribed burns just north and south of it the day before he goes in and negotiate. Give them a little reminder. Yeah.
To speak to the ELAPP General Committee. With no further comment, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Thank you. Have a nice evening, everyone.
Nice.